I'm not convinced I know how to read. I've just memorized a lot of words.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
True. All life ends in death, which we, as a species, are cursed with knowing, resulting in something. Again, this is really not my field.
It's the Al Travis Show. I've been very excited to have our next guest on. I think he's going to have an interesting perspective for us. He is the president of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. We love having him on. Sir, the assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday, for no other reason than the guy was willing to debate anybody, anywhere, at any time, the freedom of his speech. You're in an interesting spot in that your offices were firebombed, a little over a year ago for basically the same stuff, right? You guys are out there giving your thoughts on issues. You must have a different perspective on this than a lot of folks.
Well, you're right, Al. I mean, I think anybody who's active in public life on the right can tell you stories about violence coming from the left. It happens very, very often. I knew Charlie. My organization, American Experiment, collaborated with his organization, Turning Point, in a number of ways over a period of years. When we launched American Experiment North Dakota, Charlie came to Fargo, and he and I did the program at the launch event in Fargo. And I attended a number of Turning Point events with Charlie. I've been to their headquarters down in Phoenix and seen Charlie there. So I've known him, I wasn't a close personal friend, but I was a friend. And the first time, it's a story, that's kind of revealing, knowing what we now know about what happened yesterday. So I first met Charlie Kirk in 2017 when he came to the University of Minnesota to give a talk. And my youngest daughter at that time was a college student, and she was a member of Turning Point. She went to Israel on a Turning Point scholarship or Turning Point program. And so we went to see Charlie. And they had threats of violence against that event. It was in a classroom building at the University of Minnesota. And you couldn't just show up like you can at most events. You had to actually register in advance so they could vet the registrants. And when we got there, there were barriers set up outside the building, and there were 7 or 8 police officers, a real show of force because of serious threats of violence coming from the left. And we had to show our identification to get into the hall, into the room where Charlie was speaking. There were 2 communists there, and one of them raised his hand and said he was a communist, and he believed that communism was superior to free enterprise, and so he wanted to argue with Charlie about that. And so they had a nice dialogue. It was kind of a one-sided argument, as you can imagine, but Charlie treated the communist as he treated everyone, with respect, engaged his ideas, responded to them, and so it was an interesting experience. And we spent some time with Charlie after that event. So, when you think back, I would guess that Charlie Kirk is a guy who probably got death threats on about a daily basis.
Yeah.
And when I think back to 2017 and the security that he needed, just to give a little talk and talk to people, answer questions, engage with people. At the University of Minnesota, I don't know. Maybe it's a kind of a miracle that he lasted as long as he did.
What I find interesting about him is first, a very religious man. He wasn't going for me as far as I'm outside. He's a college, going after these college kids. I just happen to be a tag along. And then I start watching his videos. He was remarkably well versed in the Bible and able to remember all the chapters and verses. It's amazing how he could do that. And the other thing I thought for a high school graduate, he was so well read. If someone came up and wanted to talk to him about this guy, did you read Saul? Did you read? And he literally would throw them out. And he's like, no, I never read them. Yeah, you should, because, and he'd go off. The guy was tremendously smart. The last set of videos I watched, he was in England somewhere at some fancy university, and everybody was allowed to come up and talk. And he had no notes. They all came up with their notebooks, and he would just debate anybody, anywhere, at any time. Where did we go wrong? Where's shooting somebody like that? Is it just because he's on the right? I mean, we should have this going on everywhere with every liberal, every lefty, every righty. Go out there, stand on the block. Back in my day at the university, you'd go down the university corridor, then you'd stand on literally one of the blocks that's meant and just spew your stuff, and people would listen or they wouldn't. Shouldn't that be where we're at?
The basic thing that Charlie would do, he would go around from campus to campus and they'd set up a pop-up tent. And the one that he was
Yeah.
using yesterday on the sides, it said, "Prove me wrong."
Yep.
He would set up a pop-up tent. There would be a microphone, and it was open mic. Thousands
Yep.
of students would turn out, and anybody who wanted to talk to Charlie, ask him questions, argue with him, debate with him, come one, come all. It was open mic, and anybody who wanted to talk with Charlie, engage with Charlie, he talked to them. And Charlie used to say, when conversation ends, that's when violence begins. He believed in free speech. He believed in talking to people, including people on the left. And he really devoted his life to going around and doing that.
On that same line, the other thing you would notice in his videos, because he just thousands or 33,000 people at this event, thousands agreed with him. And he'd say, please, if you disagree with me, come to the front. He wanted you at the front of the line. He just didn't need people, caressing his ego. He wanted people to challenge him. He gave the other side every platform known to man that talked with him. And the other thing I would say is I don't remember a video of him where he ever raised his voice. He was very calm with the way he debated people. This was not a violent guy in any way, as far as I can tell.
No, you're absolutely right, Al. But, we have seen a lot of political violence in recent years. In one sense, this was a shocking event yesterday. In another sense, it really wasn't. We had the two assassination attempts on President Trump.
Yeah.
We had the murder of the United Health CEO, Brian Thompson, by Luigi Mangione, who, by the way, has gone on to become a hero on the left. Luigi has. We had the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. If you go back a few years, we had James Hodgkinson, the Bernie Sanders volunteer, shooting up the Republican congressional baseball team.
Scalise,
we had the pro-Palestinian guy who set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's house on fire. We had the people who were firebombing Tesla dealerships to the approval, as far as I could see, of most people on the left.
How did we get here, John? You've been doing this long enough. We're roughly the same age. The 60s were contentious like this, people shooting the other side. I get it. But that's now 60 years ago, and we seem to be back to that point. I would put on the Twitter doesn't help. You can put up, find millions of these people who were excited that Charlie got shot, and they put these things together. I don't know why you'd ever want to videotape that, even if that's your belief, but they're putting it out there. Is it this echo chamber that we literally can't find people who disagree with us online, that the algorithms only give us people who believe what we believe?
I don't know. I don't know, Al. I mean, you go back, I lived through the 1960s. 1968 was a terrible year in particular, and this feels a little bit like 1968. In some ways, it might be worse. Now, at that time, the Weatherman Group, was going around.
Yeah.
There were bombings. People forget this. There were a lot of bombings going on in the mid to late 1960s, not just one or two of them. There were dozens of them, and people were getting killed. I mean, people forget how violent that was. But I think one thing that may be different, Al, and I don't know why, but in those days, pretty much everybody really believed in free speech. There wasn't anybody out there advocating political violence. It happened, but people weren't cheering it on.
Yeah.
And that's not true anymore. There was a survey that was done, I think it was in April, and I wrote about it on Powerline, my personal website. And it surveyed people who said that they lean at least a little bit to the left, people who are at least somewhat liberal. So again, not extremists, but people say, I'm at least somewhat liberal. And it asked what they thought about violence, political violence directed at Donald Trump and at Elon Musk, and what they thought about firebombing Tesla dealerships. And it broke about 50-50. I could go back and look up the numbers, but about half of the liberals said, no, I think trying to assassinate President Trump would be unacceptable. But about half the liberals said, no, I think that is at least somewhat acceptable. They had like a 1 to 10 scale. I think it was like 9% or something said, hallelujah, please assassinate Trump. And about 50% of liberals were somewhere on that scale, other than no, assassination is unacceptable. It was, well, I'm kind of okay with it. And the numbers were very similar, actually a little higher for Elon Musk at that time. And I think a little over 50% were okay with firebombing Tesla dealerships. So something has changed there, Al. I mean, in 1968, you would not have gotten 50% of the people who who described themselves as liberals, as I would have at that time, saying, "Oh yeah, we're okay with political assassination."
Well, there's something with words. Words mean things. You write a lot of words. You say a lot of words. We don't use the N word anymore because in polite society that is not right. Well, maybe we got to do the same thing with Hitler and Nazis and the rest. And until somebody kills 30 million people, you don't get to use that phrase. Because I think when you ask that to a liberal, how much would you be okay with shooting somebody that they've been told is a Nazi the whole way? It's kind of like asking, if you had the opportunity, would you kill Hitler before he came into power? Knowing what you know. It's like, it's a terrible spot we put ourselves in when we start calling people those kind of names.
Well, it's so absurd, Al. I mean, Hitler, and of course, a guy like Donald Trump is the precise opposite of Hitler. The Nazis invaded how many countries? 10 countries, 12 countries. Yeah. Trump's invaded none. The Nazis vastly increased the power of government and vastly increased taxes. Yeah. Trump wants to cut the power of government and cut taxes. I mean, there's not the Nazis were virulent anti-Semites. Trump is the best friend of Israel that they've ever had at the White House. So it's kind of comical in the sense that, Donald Trump is probably the anti-Hitler.
Well, wait, John, I think both of them did not like dogs. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm sure you could find some kind of similarity. I mean, Hitler was a vegetarian. Trump, on the other hand, likes to eat steaks.
Hamburgers.
There's all kinds of similarities and differences. But I think you're right. I think that is part of it. I think the echo chambers that people live in, and I think, frankly, the decline of religious faith just gives us a world in which there are a lot more people who are willing to say, yeah, murder, a murder in a good cause, is probably okay. And as you mentioned at the top of the conversation, Al, our office got firebombed. They never caught the perpetrators, but presumably it was by people on the left. So this kind of thing happens.
Yeah, we got to go to a break. When we come back, I'm just going to hit you up real quick. Evidently, Walz is now back in. We were talking about reports of him possibly saying, I'm not too sure. Evidently, he talked to some big donors and some big Democrats, and the Walzes are getting back in the game. We'll talk about that and what that means here with John Hinderaker, president of the American Experiment, right after this.
Think about it. A famous politician once said, "You're entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts." But in a world full of AI and fake news, where can Minnesotans find the facts? Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's go-to source for fact-based analysis and common sense solutions for taxes, energy, public safety, and our kids' education. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
You need a friend at the Capitol who knows how to get things done.
And you're in luck, because that's exactly who we are, your friends at the Capitol, and we deliver results.
At Momentum Advocacy, we bring decades of experience in lobbying, public affairs, and crisis communications.
From local nonprofits to national corporations, we help you move policy, manage your media, and make your voice heard.
We're not just seasoned pros, we're essential partners.
Momentum Advocacy, your friends at the Capitol. Learn more at momentum-advocacy.com.
September 24th is Suicide Prevention on the Air Day in Minnesota. Every dollar raised supports SAVE, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, providing education, advocacy, and programs that save lives. And on September 24th, your gift will go twice as far because every donation will be matched dollar for dollar. Visit save.org to see our work, learn how you can help, and donate. Remember, September 24th, because every voice can save a life. kidding me?
You know that comment you said to the radio? The thing that we got wrong?
Clearly, Brussels sprouts are the worst vegetable.
Call us and let the world know your thoughts. 855-257-7469. That's 855-ALS-SHOW.
I've got him, John Hinderaker, American Experiment, talking what's going on here in the state of Minnesota now. The governor evidently is back on the I want to be governor for a third time bandwagon. I ask you this, if we are going to have a special session, John, shouldn't he announce his reelection before he does the special election, or we're going to go back a couple more weeks? If he says I'm out, that makes him lame duck with a special session. I think he has to announce it before we go to special session. Your thoughts on Walz getting back in?
Well, he hasn't officially announced that, has he, Al?
No.
I mean, I've just
No. They said there's some
about
high money Dems that he went and chatted to, and they've kind of ratted him out.
Yeah. So Walz said he was going to announce his intentions after Labor Day.
Yeah.
And most people assumed that meant right after Labor Day,
Yep.
not someday
November
in the definite
before
future.
Thanksgiving.
And he hasn't made any public announcement yet. So obviously he's been thinking about it, probably going back and forth. The current scuttlebutt, at least, is that he's going to run. And that's what everybody thought 6 months ago. Everybody assumed he's running for a third term. And that's why half the Democrats in Minnesota announced for the Senate seat.
Yeah.
And nobody announced for the governor seat, right?
Yeah.
They all thought Walz is running. And now, at least the latest rumor is that he is going to try for a third term. You know, the rumor I was hearing up until a couple of days ago was that he was not going to run and that Amy Klobuchar was going to come back from Washington and run for governor.
Then appoint him as senator, right?
Pardon me?
The whole rumor of that is then wasn't she then, if she wins governorship, then appoints him to take her place? Isn't that the whole circle on that rumor?
That was part of the rumor, right? But apparently, at least the current rumor is that that's not going to happen. So who knows? I guess I'll believe it when he actually makes an official announcement. The thing I would say, Al, is this: third terms are hard to get. If you look at the history of governors who have served 2 terms and were eligible for a third and decided to put their hat in the ring one more time, it's not easy. Scott Walker tried to do that next door in Wisconsin. He was a popular and successful governor, but he couldn't get a third term. Voters get tired of you after a while, and little grievances accumulate. And of course, there are a lot of aspects of Tim Walz's record that are not going to be easy for him to defend. The massive frauds that we have seen perpetrated against the state of Minnesota.
I don't want to run out of time. I want to do one last thing before I let you go, John. You have an event coming up in Mankato a week from today. Deadly Force Behind the Scenes with the Minnesota BCA's Force Investigation Unit, moderated by Dave Zimmer. You set that up. People can is that open to the public?
Oh, it's super interesting. Go to AmericanExperiment.org, click at the top where it says events, and it'll show you our upcoming events, including that one in Mankato. It's going to be super interesting. Dave Zimmer is a 33-year veteran of the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. He's our public safety policy fellow, and he's lined up somebody from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to appear with him at this event and talk about those issues in Mankato. So I would absolutely encourage anybody listening, if you live within driving distance of Mankato, check it out.
Thank you, my friend. We are out of time. I appreciate you being on and your perspective on what happened yesterday and what's going on in the state. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Al.
John Hinderaker, president of the American Experiment.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing?